Hey, it's Joshua Helms here again. And this time I'm showing you my church pedal board, my church setup. And this is a little bit different. I'd made a video quite a while back of what I use at church. And I've changed it up a little bit, so I thought I'd show you what's going on here. Again, homemade board. Yeah, I'll lift it up a little bit here so you can see. Took an old board, drilled a bunch of holes in it, and zip tied them together, and hey, does the job. Works for me anyways. Started doing the pedal board thing because I got tired of unhooking everything and taking it somewhere, like if we do an outside gig or something, and then you have to set them all back up again. And I quickly realized why people put them on boards. So now I'm starting to get the idea. So I'll show you what we got going on here. Starting out, the amp. This is an old Music Man. I don't know how old it is, but it's basically like a Fender Deluxe or a Fender, kind of like a Fender Twin, but it has a single 15-inch speaker. Sounds great. Got a real warm, real good blues tone. So the first thing about getting a good tone is starting with your amp. So you can have all the pedals in the world and all the effects, but if you don't start out at the amp and get a good tone, then everything that you do on top of that is just gonna add more to a bad sound. This is a pretty good amp. All by itself sounds great, and I could actually get by with using no effects at all and still sound good with this amp. And I think I've got them bumped up a little bit, but I actually will keep my mids down just a little bit, and there's a reason for that. Because playing in a church setting, or really in any kind of band mix, our platform here is actually very narrow. So if I've got mids too heavy in the amp, it's really hard on the ear. And it can actually make the guitar override everybody instead of blending in. So my goal is to blend in. And so, I don't know if you can hear, it's still a little bit mid-heavy. So I try to keep it where the guitar blends in without getting lost. How do you compensate for that? What if you need the mids? So that helps to be able to play along with the band and blend in without overriding everybody. So let's start with the pedal board here. I know you can't see from that angle, so I'll explain what I've got going on here. First thing is my EQ. Again, most everything on here is pretty budget level. A couple Behringer pedals. A couple other ones. This is a Behringer EQ. Hey, EQs all do the same thing no matter what brand they are. And what I've got set up here is basically everything is pretty flat, aside from my mids. My mid frequencies I've got bumped up just a little bit. And I've got my highs actually taken down some. So here's the difference. Without the EQ on. Difference, but just enough that if I need to cut through the mix, I've got it set where I get just a slight volume boost, but I really just get more of a mid boost. So once my volume is pretty well set, I don't have to really bump it up that much. What I'm doing is I'm just kicking the mids in. So if I need to play a lead line and it just needs to be heard a little bit over the music, that really usually will do the job. But I don't stay on that because too much mids can get really hard on the ear, especially when you're standing right here. I've got a piano player right in front of the amp here, and the way the amp faces out into the seating, it's pretty much ear level. So you've got to be really careful with too much mids in a mix, depending on how you know, the area that you're playing is set up. So I will tend to stay off the mids until I need them. So that's how I use my EQ. Now, I have used this same EQ in a different kind of way. I've played through amps where I wasn't real happy with the sound that came out of the amp, so I used the EQ as kind of a tone shaper. And you can really alter the tone of your amp just by changing your EQs a little bit. Sometimes pulling the mids out. In fact, that's how I used to have it set on a solid state amp that I had before that was okay, but just a little bit mid heavy. I used it to pull the mids out. And or you can use it as a complete volume boost. There's a lot of things you can do with an EQ. That's how I'm using it in this scenario. So there is my EQ that's very, actually rarely used, except when I need it. So then I'm going into, I've got a chorus on here that the music that we play anymore really doesn't call for a chorus. It just doesn't seem to fit that well. It's not a bad chorus. Song that we're playing works with some of the contemporary worship songs, and it works on some older kind of Southern gospel style. You hear a lot of chorus in the really old songs. Yeah, stuff like that. All right, now I forgot to explain to you another pedal that's actually in the front of the line. What I've got here, you see this pink pedal. That's just a standard spring reverb. Now this amp, I thought that the reverb was not working, but it actually does work. I bumped it a little too hard and the reverb came back on. So hey, I've got reverb now. But I put this little spring reverb on. I think it's a Mosky brand, Mosky or Mosky, I'm not sure. One of those budget pedals. And that's all I use it for, just an always on. Can't really tell because I've already got reverb on the amp, but let's say my reverb stopped working, I've got reverb right there. And I just leave my reverb at just kind of just enough that it's not a totally dry signal. I don't use it for a whole lot of ambience, which I love to hear people play that way. It's just not usually the way I play. I'm kind of more blues driven, I guess. That's probably the reason why. So I've got a compressor, this orange pedal here, and it's an Azure. I think I got it for about $18, maybe 20 something. Super affordable, and it sounds great, does the job. I use it mostly in kind of like faster, so it works really good with old hymns, that faster praise music kind of. just to get that pop. Don't use it a whole lot except in a situation where you just want it to kind of pop like that. So yeah, most of my settings are pretty subtle. So I already like the tone coming out straight out of the amp. So that's just kind of give it a little extra. I don't think this is the compressor that will give you a whole lot of sustain. It's got more of a real heavy pop, which is, I use it for that effect. So it works perfect for me. Some people don't like that tone. Some like to use it for, kind of when you use it with a lot of distortion, it makes it, kind of makes the notes ring out a little longer. I guess it could do that, but that's not the goal that I'm using it for. So then I go over to my Donner Yellow Fall. That's just a standard analog delay. I keep it set where it could work with just about any songs. I don't want to have to bend down and actually change the timing of the delay all the time. It's not a tap tempo or anything like that, just real standard. So I use it where it's just kind of in the background. A lot of times I'll start out a song on the delay and then turn it off as I go into the song. That's usually the way that I'm using it in that effect. A lot of different ways to use delay. I just use it as kind of a background sound, just kind of help add a little bit of ambience perhaps, without having to change settings for every song. So sometimes with the compressor and delay together, it's kind of cool. So we go from there. So here is really my main effect that I use. This kind of gold, copper, I'm not real sure what that color is. This is iSet brand Dumbler. This is my absolute favorite of all that I have, and I'm really a fan of all these mini pedals. And I'm really thinking about just switching everything I have over to the mini pedals. They take up a lot less space, they're simple. And I don't know, for whatever reason, I'm just really attracted to the mini pedals. I'll usually bypass any other pedal and just go straight for these. And this kind of emulates the sound of a Dumble amp, which is a hard thing to emulate, but all the reviews I've seen on this particular one actually give it quite a bit of praise. So I try to use it as a light crunch. I've got it pretty heavy right now, so I might go into that same song just like that. Yeah, it's got a real, I mean, it's got a lot of gain, but it's not a really heavy gain. It can be. I mean, I could take the knob and really put it into full distortion mode, but it's just kind of a nice rumble. That's how I like to use it. And depending on how you play, it's really more about how you attack the strings. So yeah, the dirt's there, but it's not up in the forefront. So it allows the tone of the guitar to actually push through, or it allows the guitar really to be unchanged, and it just adds a little grit to it. That's normally how I'm using that. That's actually my favorite one. Sometimes it'll stay on through a whole song. And then I've got my distortion. This is a Tom's Line. I think I bought it for $18. It's used. Most everything I have is used. And it's basically very similar to the Boss DS1 that I have at home. And I'm not sure what it's supposed to be trying to copy, but I'd say that's pretty close. So this is rare occasions, there will be times that I can play that heavy, but most of the time I'm really not using that much distortion. I do use a lot of overdrive, so I tend to stay more. It thickens the tone, does give it a little bit of dirt, but it's not blaring distortion. You can click them on both together. Rarely will I have a reason to use that much distortion, but I will use that distortion with lead. So let's say I'm playing in that, I'm on that overdriven tone. I want to throw some lead in. And without even clicking this pedal off, I can just click this one on. Place that I use that. Another place I use it is strictly for lead and rolling the tone knob back quite a bit, and it gives it more of a in my mind I'm thinking Carlos Santana. That's the tone that I'm kind of going for. So there's that. The tone all the way up. I use it in that instance a lot, and sometimes with both overdrive and distortion. These are a lot more sustained. There's a tone all the way back. that's where I use a heavy distortion like that. But in most other cases, I don't have a whole lot of need for that kind of distortion. It's really just strictly lead. Everything else is done through here, through the overdrive. And I use that for rhythm quite a bit too. Just depends on what we're playing. Sometimes I'll kick that on for even if we're playing something like play a little lead while the band's still playing, and I don't want to really do any more distortion. I'm just going to click my EQ on. Those are the uses that I have for this particular setup. It seems to work pretty well. The main thing about playing in church, playing in a worship setting is we're all trying to blend. So this seems to work for me pretty well. I think I found a way that I can change tones without being a dramatic change that as soon as you hear it, it kind of is almost distracting. That's one thing that I try to stay away from. It is not that I don't like other sounds. I'm just always trying to do what works for the song, what works for the situation. So maybe give somebody some ideas. Maybe how to stack your distortion into your overdrive. These are some things that I've just kind of learned recently over time. Usually a lot of people, it's pretty typical, have 2 or 3 different stages of overdrive, a couple different delays and different reverbs and stuff. That's pretty typical setup. Mine's just pretty basic, but it's kind of another version of that. So there it is. There's my church setup, and till next time, we'll see you.